everybody. I'm Kelly,
And I'm Paul.
and welcome to The Fungus.
Among Us, a Last of Us podcast.
So this is our first time recording on camera, and I feel silly because I have to use my headset for my PlayStation, just because I'm having headset issues. So this is my default, and I'm so glad to have you guys here, and it's so funny and weird and good to be talking to you face to face on this.
Yeah, it is. It's been a long time coming, and I'm glad we're finally doing it. Before the recording here, Kelly and I were discussing how we both feel a little bit bad that we don't have any Last of Us stuff to put around us in our environment.
Well, I have my guitars, one of my dad's guitar and the guitar that he gifted me. And the way that the music sort of is just threaded throughout this story and the relationship that Joel and Ellie have to guitars, as y'all learn. Um, it means something to me. It feels like a Last of Us vibe.
Yeah,
Um, I do always want to put out there, please be aware, in this podcast there are spoilers. We have played the games, and we know the characters, so if you want to participate in the episode, just be aware there are spoilers.
that's right. Although after episode 2 of season 2 of The Last of Us, Through the Valley, the big spoiler has happened, so at least we don't have to worry about that anymore.
The biggest, yeah, but there are a lot of spoilers to
Yeah, there are.
come.
We'll
So
probably still, but I don't know. I mean, yeah, we'll do our best, but yeah, there's no way. What we've learned, there's no way for us to talk about this franchise without constantly spewing spoilers. So I guess just be ready for that.
yeah, we'll do our best, but at the same time, so much of the show is about our relationship to the game and these characters and sort of navigating our way through the show, which, by the way, I'm loving this season so far.
Oh my god,
I, they have upped the ante. I mean, you wanted more infected.
they
Good God,
really,
you
yeah,
got it.
they really took that note. I mean, I got a third of the way through the episode, and I was like, wow, they sure have put a lot more infected in the show. And then I got to the middle part of the episode and I was like, I just basically was shocked into mindless, like a stupor. I couldn't even think anymore while I was watching it.
I mean, the intelligence of these creatures really is just at the forefront of, I think, of this episode. And you sort of got a sense of that in the first episode. But I think the way when the pipeline broke and you could see the cordyceps moving, that sort of signaled a lot of the infected to arise and awaken. I think in combination with Abby sort of disturbing them a little bit. So in some ways, Abby's to blame for the entire breakdown of Jackson. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I mean, kind of though. But that's interesting what you said about how they're kind of being established as intelligent because it also established, I mean, it's almost like the fungus that's controlling all of them is really like kind of what's doing the quote unquote thinking. Because, they established at the beginning, they found that they're using the frozen bodies of infected to keep other infected warm underneath them, which is a pretty cool idea and pretty terrifying and led to an extremely cool, terrifying shot when they're all seething out of the ground as Abby's running away.
I
I mean that
mean,
that was that was pure gold.
I felt chills. In fact, I figured out the name of this episode is going to be Chills. Because not only one of the aspects that I thought was really cool about this episode is so much of it, a lot of it was they were really in the elements, like in the wintry, cold, bracing these experiences.
Yeah, one
And
character even got
yeah.
frostbite on her wrist.
Dina?
Yeah.
Well, that's a character, but like in real life, did she? Isabella?
No, but all the characters had chills because they were really cold is what I'm saying.
Exactly. So I
Yeah.
got chills from the zombies. Dina got frostbite. I mean, again, this episode so far, they have exceeded my expectations of this season, and they are continuing to do so. I mean, I of course I have some questions that don't even just come up for me as someone that loved the game, but even watching it with my partner, even he had some questions that we'll revisit. Um, yeah, he has to put up with me as I continue to talk about The Last of Us maybe every day.
Yeah. So yeah, so my partner, my girlfriend is in Mexico and she watched the episode there. So we were like texting a little bit basically
Ooh,
right before I sat down to watch it. And then after as we were both trying to process our feelings. Cuz this
yeah.
was they we knew it was coming and they did it.
Did
And
she know that Joel's death was coming?
no, she's completely spoiler free. I mean, she hasn't played the game. She's not even really in that world. It's not. She doesn't have the kind of news feed that's constantly popping up with headlines about Last of Us like I do. So yeah, she had no clue it was coming. And I felt honestly, I mean, it's just so. I'm so appreciative that she went out of her way to sort of engage with the show and start watching it because she knew
Mhm.
it was important to me and she's become a fan. And I've also all along felt a little guilty for getting her interested in it because I'm like, man, at some point she's going to get to the part where Joel dies and she's going to have to go through that experience. And I can't help but feel partially responsible.
Yeah, I don't feel guilty at all dragging Maro through it.
Nor should you. I mean, she has told me not to feel guilty. We were texting about it today, but
Um, have you I saw a funny meme. It's the one that's played over and over and over again on different scenarios where Nicolas Cage and Pedro Pascal were in that one movie together, and it's like that song, "Make Your Own Kind of Music," and just, like it's like Nicolas Cage, he turns to the camera and is just, like, grimacing, and, like, Pedro Pascal, you cut to him, and he's, like, laughing, "Ha, ha, ha, ha," you know?
is that the one where
He's so
they're in a car? Are they in a car?
yes,
Yeah,
so
and
many
Pedro
memes in that.
Pascal's making crazy eyes. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
So there's one where Nicolas Cage's meme or that side says, "The Last of Us fans of the show reacting to Joel's death," and then it cuts to Pedro Pascal, The Last of Us gamers who knew all along, and Joel's just like laughing, or sorry, Pedro, but it's just kind of like it didn't. I really felt the loss of this.
Mhm.
I wondered if and when they were going to kill Joel, if it was gonna be as early in this season, and I knew it was coming. For some reason, I just knew it was coming in this episode.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that I mean, that's what was for me so much fun about watching this episode is you get to like, okay, Abby's running away. There's the whole fence scene from the game. Joel saves her just like in the game, and they're out.
Yep,
And so that's when it's like, okay, it's probably this episode because they're
yep.
doing the game beat for beat. So, oh boy, here we go. I'm gonna have to watch Joel die in this episode. But then the next thing you know, you're in like a half-hour long Game of Thrones, like Helm's Deep epic battle sequence, and I completely forgot about Joel. I'm just
It's in
like
my note.
completely blown away. So, and then it ends, and I'm like, oh, it goes back to Joel and Abby, and I'm like, oh shit, this is gonna happen. What a roller coaster! Holy crap!
One of my notes, Game of Thrones vibes.
Well, yeah, and this director Mark Mylod did a bunch of Game of Thrones episodes, so
Oh,
you
yeah,
can
that
see,
that's right.
yeah.
Yeah. I think, I often don't listen to the podcast, um, after the episode of, the official Last of Us podcast. And this time I did, and, Neil Druckmann, I guess, spoke with the director and said I guess Neil Druckmann was like, "Oh gosh, there's a lot you're dealing with in this episode. You've got this infected, this big fight scene." But I guess the director was most worried about, like, nailing that scene of Abby and Joel and the death, and then also Ellie witnessing it. And, I appreciated that he was, like, most nervous about that,
Yeah.
because it's such a, I mean, I felt so many things. There's so many changes and deviations that I actually enjoyed, and I think for a show played really well.
Yeah, I do too. It's interesting because, by the way, I read an interview. The director said that he was crying when they were shooting that scene, which
I mean,
again,
I cried for
mad
the
respect.
I watched this 3 times now. I cried.
Yeah, yeah, I know, I did
No,
too.
I love how the story opens up, and we're coming from I'm coming from the game right now. There's so much mirroring in this show, that I find really interesting. I wanna almost immediately address Abby because that's what they do in this episode where she's in this dream walking down the hallway. You also have that experience as Ellie going down through, like, a stairwell into where Joel is being killed, and sort of that's her, like, flashback memory. Later on in the game, you find out. And I felt that it's kind of interesting they're extracting that and sort of injecting that into, like, Abby's timeline. Um, I think it's intentional that they're doing such a delicate job in building up Abby's story, so early on so that you truly feel for this character. Because so much of the backlash, which I thought, again, and we've gone over this a bit, which has been so weird, is that people just truly hated on Abby, and then the characters that played Abby, and then the face actors, and this and that. It's just like super strange because I'm like, these are actors playing a role in a story. Everyone calm down. I
Yeah.
get that it's very upsetting. But anyway, I feel like so so connected to Abby, and maybe it's just and Ellie. It's so difficult. I think um losing my dad this past year when Abby delivers that line like one of those fireflies he killed was my father. I was just like, you get him, you get him. And I'm like, wait a second, wait, that's Joel. Oh, this is like Ellie's like dad. What this I can't handle this. So
Yeah.
there's so much going on.
There is.
Oh.
It's interesting that you say that because I've been reading a lot of not a lot, but I've been skimming a lot of the different reviews and reactions to the episode. And one thing that I've been finding is that a lot of the reviewers from game journalism sites and are are expressing all this doubt about the way that they're handling the Abby story. Like it's like, oh, they told us her motivations too early, or they didn't give us enough time to relate to her motivations, and now they've screwed the pooch, and the audience is never going to like Abby because they messed it up. And I mean, it's just baffling to me,
Wow.
and I think it's so interesting that it's coming almost exclusively from people who have played the game because the big media outlets that are reviewing it that were with reviewers who either haven't played the game or aren't really factoring that experience into their review are all praising the episode, but video game
Mm.
people are having a lot of trouble with the changes. And then that makes me wonder, because that's where I was at last season. I'm like, was that me last season having trouble with all these changes? And I don't know, it's interesting, but
Mm.
I'm like, did these people never watch Game of Thrones? Like, are they not, we've seen tons
It's
of shows where characters do horrible things and then later we start to like them.
no, exactly. I mean, it's tough. And here's the thing, and it's no spoiler warning because you see it in advertisements, and Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin have mentioned it, and all over social media. We're gonna see Joel again. We're gonna have time with Joel again. So that sort of gives me comfort that we get to enjoy Pedro Pascal playing Joel, and
In
almost more
flashbacks.
heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, but still, I mean, those flashbacks that you play in the game too are so critical to like understanding Ellie's motives, and her agony and her story of vengeance and justice. I mean, that's what really season 2 is about is revenge and justice. Like these characters are seeking justice, whereas the first story to me was about building family and love and that type of relationship. So I anyhow, I felt that it was a great opening scene with Abby. I want to get into some things where okay, I have some notes. I'm trying to understand my notes.
All
I
right.
have my dad's handwriting and that's not a compliment. um okay. Oh, yes. All right. Since we're just going into it. Okay.
Yeah.
When Joel meets Abby, I have to say, like, as someone who played the game, I don't know, I have to go back. I felt so much fear when Abby was, like, running from all the infected, and going through the fence and digging her way through, and, like, the way that one creature, its, like, hand was splitting in 2 trying to reach for Abby I'm like, "This is so freaking cool." Oh my god,
I
I was
know.
like, um God, it almost just breaks your heart that, like, Abby recognizes, after, she hears Dina saying, "Joel, Joel." I thought that it mirrored and complemented the game so well. That's one scene that they created from the game that I really enjoyed.
Me too. And that was, I think I maybe mentioned it a few episodes ago. That was one specific set piece that I was really excited about being translated into the show because we saw it in the early trailers, and also it was just a really conceptually like terrifying situation to put in a zombie type show, you know? So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I was so gratified when it showed up, and they did it so well. I mean, and not just that, but like all of the infected stuff, all the action scenes in this episode, all the chasing, they just really took their time with it and really put you in the
Mhm.
moment. Because in the first season, a lot of the time, even when they showed the infected, I felt like they were kind of rushed through it a lot of the time. But this
Mhm.
was just like a long, luxurious horror movie battle situation.
Yes.
So, and that scene was just the first example of it in this episode.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, the fact that there's, the now imminent and concurrent threat happening to Jackson while, we're in fear of Joel's safety. I felt so much more stressed in this show than I did in the game, and I didn't think that was possible. Didn't
Yeah.
think it was possible.
Well, in
So
a way, it's also like, I mean, I remember also, if you already know that Joel is going to die, that might make it more stressful. Because when I was in this part of the game, it never crossed my mind that it was going to end with him dying. Although it was really upsetting when he got his knee blasted apart. Because I'm like, oh, okay, he's going to have to. He's not coming. How do I crouch and sneak now if Joel doesn't have a knee on that leg?
I
But I
mean,
still didn't quite think he was going to die right until up until it happened.
really? Because for some reason I suspected that he was going to. I don't know why. I felt like
Yeah,
maybe I don't know. One thing I wanted to add in there that I think is for me an interesting choice and deviation from the game is having Dina with Joel on that ride, on that patrol, rather than Tommy. I think it was a great choice because of this you're gonna have Dina's gonna have the opportunity. You've already established, right, that Dina is also this really important person to Joel and vice versa. So, as a gamer, I think it's a great choice for a TV show that you're going to feel Dina's motive in going with Ellie to seek justice and vengeance so much more so. I think it's important that they chose her. However, I really missed Tommy, the brothers, them being together. I thought that was such a great scene for them in the game. And it makes sense for Tommy's character later on. I think with what they did in the show, it's important that Tommy was in the town defending it. And we'll get to that. But that is the one thing I have mixed feelings on. Good mixed feelings, but I'm like, "Oh, man, I really missed Tommy being there and being curious about who Abby and who is this group," and, like, they're brothers, man, and it was just like, for Tommy to experience that loss in the game, oh,
yeah. Another thing that was lost because of that change is the scene where Ellie and Dina smoke weed and hook up in Eugene's basement, right from the game, which was a very cozy, very lovely, kind of romantic, sexy scene. So I don't know, maybe they'll repurpose it and put it later in the show, but it would have happened in this episode, except for it was Ellie and Jesse. And then for a sec, I was like, dude, that'd be so messed up if Ellie and Jesse hooked up
I
in the
know, I
show.
thought that too. I was like, "Wait a second, this is not right." Like,
But, like,
whereas Dina
never
one,
happened,
I
so
missed
they
the
didn't do that.
library and them sort of navigating that Dina and, Ellie find Eugene's basement, right? This was just like some sort of random 7-Eleven that you could have found, I think, at any point, and Ellie's like, "Oh, where's this been the whole time?" I'm like, "It was right here." I don't know, it
Yeah,
just felt a little too I wasn't quite buying it. And it's funny you mention it because that was one of my what am I looking forward to most in a scene was that scene where
yeah,
Dina and Ellie are together smoking weed and enjoying each other in the basement in the storm. And I'm like,
yeah.
that was missed.
It was missed, but, I mean, maybe we'll get it another time.
Well, for me in the game, it just like established them as a romantic couple even more so. Like right
And
now,
yeah.
yeah, like watching it in the show, I'm like, I don't totally see them as a romantic couple yet.
Right. Maybe it's a kind of thing where they're going to spread that arc out over the season. But the other thing that
Sure.
was nice about that is it established them as a couple before tragedy struck. So that way
Mhm.
they were able to spend a moment in the story just connecting without Ellie processing a huge loss and without the two of them being on a mission for revenge and all that kind of stuff that happens later.
Yeah.
So one Easter egg that I noticed in that section was the part where Ellie finds the gas mask with the bong attached to it. 'Cause you can find that
Yeah.
in the game, and I think she makes a similar joke about it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think there's a lot of little Easter egg like that, but one thing I wanted to talk to you about, I didn't quite understand it, and you're so much better at catching these things, I feel like, than I am. I was having trouble with the whole scene of where Tommy is holding this town hall. They're getting prepared to fight. And I was like, "Well, wait, where is the threat coming from? What I don't quite understand because they haven't found that the cordyceps are breaking through this pipeline yet. What is this town hall about? Like why are they all meeting as if some imminent threat is about to happen? Is it the weather?" I was like, this it just felt very like it felt like a non-traditional meeting at the same
Yeah.
time like I don't know.
It was established in the first scene with Jesse. So because they had just found out that there were a bunch of active live infected under the frozen
Mhm.
infected under the snow, they realized that they had no idea how many there were. And they know that the cordyceps network can communicate with large groups of infected and stuff like that. So that was why they like elevated their threat level, basically, you know?
I blame Ellie because she undermines it. She's like, "What? Like there's 1,000, you know?" And I was like, "Yeah." That's why I was like, "What's the big deal? Like
You're
there's
like, didn't you guys
1,000."
hear what Ellie said? You don't need to
Yeah,
do that. Yeah.
listen to Ellie.
Yeah.
Okay, so that helps a lot. I
Yeah.
was just really in the moment.
Yeah.
I do love that sort of knock scene in the beginning too when Jesse like wakes Ellie up. And it just made me feel back in the game a little bit. That was another moment that I really enjoyed.
Mhm.
Again, it's interesting playing the game, watching the show for sort of Ellie to say, like, they talked and they're cool now. We didn't get that luxury in the game. We
Well,
did not get that luxury in the game that they were cool now.
no, well, what I mean, but I think they're doing the same thing they did in the game. Because remember, at the very end of the game, you get that flashback scene of that happening.
Yeah, but there was no, like, Ellie mentioning that right
Right,
before the death.
yeah,
Like, you're just kinda like, "Okay, they're at odds," and you don't really know why yet until later on, and
yeah.
the fact that there was this sort of sense of resolve, I was like, "Oh, man, I wanted to see it."
Well, we will, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm sure we
We'll
will.
see it in a flashback later, but, like, I think that they were kind of planting it because that was another thing that I saw a video game journalist freaking out about was that, like, "Oh, in this version, that she just walked past the porch," you know? And so with this episode, I'm like, "Well, yeah, but then obviously she went back later that night and they talked, and we're gonna see that in a flashback later,"
Oh,
but,
yeah,
you
obviously.
know,
Like,
yeah,
I know it's gonna happen. I just was sort of surprised that she was like, "Okay," to Jesse, like, "My shit's complicated with Joel, but it's all good now, and now we're gonna have some fucking daddy-daughter day, okay? Like, just let it go." And I was
yeah,
like, "Oh, so they're cool now." Like, I'm like, "I know that scene happened." Um, but I'm actually glad that they had it because I think, as you know, and I'm just killing this note to death, want more Joel and Ellie scenes together.
yeah.
So that kind of, you
Have they
know
even Oh, yeah, the only time they've been in the same room this season was at the dance when she was yelling at him.
yeah, and then she
Yeah.
passed it. So, you know
We'll get that, we'll get I'm sure that, like, they're for sure gonna do the museum birthday sequence.
Yeah.
That might even be a whole episode, so it's gonna come. We're gonna get
Yeah.
it.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think they're just so there are so many things that are going so well that like I'm buying into it so far. I think even like the creators of the show were like, "We learned from last season." I'm like, "Yeah, you did.
They did. Yeah, I
This
know.
season is kicking butt." And again, I'm
Yes.
glad. I'm rooting for it. I'm
Yeah.
rooting for it. So,
Totally. I'm rooting for
yeah.
it and I'm rooting for everyone involved and I'm just so happy to see them killing it. Like it makes me so happy.
Yeah.
And well and but even beyond that cuz with this last episode I was overwhelmed by how cool everything was. you know,
Mhm.
I was just like I had no ability to think critically because I was just like I was so shocked by how awesome shit was that I was just put into sort of a receptive state where it was all I could do to sit there and let it wash over my eyeballs and just try to keep up. Breathe, breathe.
Ow! Wait.
Dude, you should totally put this in the episode for those who are just listening and can't watch this on YouTube. Kelly
It's
just,
caught in
I don't
my
know what
hair. I
she
can't hear
she
what you're saying.
Kelly just fell back in her chair and her headphones got caught in her hair. This is all just because she was attempting to drink water. This is so much more fun with the video. I'm so glad that we're doing this. Yeah. If you're only listening, you gotta tune in, you gotta check us out on YouTube so you can watch Kelly's hijinks and see her cute dog.
Let's get into Abby just a little bit more. Um, as you know, as we joked about, like I call you once a month about how awesome Caitlin Deaver is.
At least once a month, yeah.
I was not anymore because she's on she's on
Right.
a show.
Right, now
Um,
we don't need to talk about it anymore.
but
It's in front of our faces every Sunday night.
building up to the show, I was like, Caitlin Deaver's awesome. Check this out. Um, I really love that the power that she sort of holds over this nervous group. I think the group around her isn't really quite confident as she is, and I think that makes it so much more enjoyable in the show versus the game.
No, it was cool to see, to get more of this Abby's supporting cast, her friends and stuff
Mhm.
like that. We saw a little bit more of Owen, and I'm starting to become more engaged by his performance. And yeah, Mel, and then Nora, who,
No, yeah.
and I don't know if we talked about this on the podcast yet. I feel like maybe I was aware of it and I forgot or something, but that's Tati Gabrielle, the actress who's going to
Mm.
play the lead in the new Naughty Dog game, Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Isn't that
yeah.
cool? And they
That
cast
is
her as Nora
cool.
in the show. And I think that, I mean, out of all of that supporting cast, because none of them had a lot to do in this episode. They were all just like kind of standing there
Mhm.
having different reactions to Abby for the most part. But I really felt like with that actress and with Nora, I don't know, there was just a lot going on behind her eyes. And I found her to be very compelling whenever they would cut to her reactions. And then that made me more excited for Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet.
Yeah, I mean, I won't forget the moment where Abby turns around and says, "And this is Joel." You cut to Nora's reaction, which, I remembered. So, I think certainly a noteworthy performance.
One difference that in the big scene, the killing of Joel, one big difference from the game is that it's a lot more talky, right? So Abby
Oh,
is like
yeah.
talking to him about what he's done and her reasons for
Mhm.
doing it, the morality behind it. How did that grab you?
I think it was, emotional. I felt when she says, when she talks about the amount of fireflies that were killed, the soldiers, and then the doctor, and that doctor was my dad. That interaction between Joel and Abby, I almost felt as if like right before she killed him, there was like an understanding between them. Like I
Mhm.
felt this understanding between them in a way that I didn't feel in the game. So that's what also gave me chills. Um, and I appreciate that she shared that it was about that this whole thing was about her dad. And so, um, in some ways, I think it made the scene so much more heartbreaking when he did come to his final moment. And Ellie finds him. I mean, gosh, how did it grab me?
Well, I was just mostly asking about the monologue. We can move on to that in a sec. Yeah,
um,
I'm like have this like sensitivity to the show like explaining itself, and at first I was like, is this monologue too much? And then watching it a second time I was like, I don't know if it is, but what I do know is that Caitlin Deaver is just killing it so hard that
yeah.
I kind of don't care. Like it's just one of those things where I'm like, okay, so here's another question I have for you based on an observation that I have about the scene, which is that this scene is, I think, a lot more brutal than the one in the game.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's a lot of details that were added to like draw out the moments to make it more painful. We see Joel just getting beat up a lot more than we did in the game. We
Hmm.
see the moment where Ellie's begging him to get up, where he actually tries, and it shows her for a second being like, "Is he going to get up?" And then he doesn't. And then,
It
and that
gives
whole
you it gives you hope as a viewer that he might just get up
yeah,
and he will be okay, and this whole story is gonna be different. I mean, um, there was
which
there
is
the way that this death scene unfolds, I am so heartbroken that I felt that there was, like, some room for saving him, more so than in the game. Like, when Ellie is there, like, going through the house, I'm like, "Hurry up, Ellie, you still have time." I felt that pressure more. Oh, man, it was brutal.
It was.
It was a brutal death scene.
Another thing that the show did that the game, I think, kind of shied away from is that you spend a lot more time with him and Ellie after the death. So in this one, you have Ellie crawling across the floor, crying, pulling the broken golf club in the neck was new to the show. I think the game
Mhm.
just shows her bringing the golf club down and it cuts to black. This
Yeah.
time you get like long close ups of his face with the golf club in the neck and the dead eyes, and then Ellie crawls over and then she's like crying and like holding his hand and like, I mean, fucking brutal. So here's my question: did they go too far? Was it too brutal?
I think it's setting up the show for how brutal things are gonna be. I think
Yeah.
it's, giving the audience a chance to prepare themselves for what's to come. Especially playing the game, it gets brutal at times. So I think, um, was it too much? No.
Yeah. I
I
you know,
mean, I'm sad, I'm devastated. I was, like, sobbing when Ellie's crawling over to him and rests her cheek. Like, I'm gonna cry about it now, I cry over every episode. But,
yeah.
like, again, I'm going into this show with, like, you're gonna see me shift. I'm going into this show with a whole different sense of grief and losing my dad. Like the way she crawls over to him and places her cheek on his shoulder on his cheek. One of the last things that I did when my dad took his last breath is I put my cheek on his forehead and I said, "I love you." And so it broke me. It broke me. And Bella Ramsey did a heartbreakingly beautiful performance of saying goodbye to our beloved character, Joel.
Yeah, it's a hard scene to watch. I thought it was too much the first time I was watching it, and then the second time I was watching it, I was like, "Is it too much?" I don't know. I mean, it's all creatively justified. It makes sense that they would
Mhm.
do the scene this way, but it's too much for me. Like, I don't want to watch it. But that's a subjective thing. That's not a
Yeah, I
quality
think
thing.
you messaged you were like, "I don't wanna watch this," and I was like, that's I guess I was just expecting that much violence from Abby that, like, I'm not shocked that they just went full force.
Yeah, no, I'm not shocked by it either. And I mean, yeah, it was to be expected, I suppose.
But
But
that's a great question, like, was it too much? I don't know, I'd have to reflect on that one.
I mean, it's such a subjective thing, right? How much is too
Mhm.
much? But I guess there were times where it just felt a little mean to me. And it's funny because
Yeah.
that was my sister's feeling about the video game version of that scene. Because my sister, also a huge
Mm.
Last of Us fan for the listeners. And when she played through that scene in Last of Us Part 2 where Joel gets killed, she was like offended. She was like, no, it's too cruel to the viewer to put to the player to put them through that. And that was kind of how I felt about the show version, not so much the game version. But really, I think that it's just a testament to how effective it is and how engaging these characters are.
Well, I mean, it is cruel. It is very cruel, and I
I mean,
think
it's kind of
that's
the
part
point,
of
right?
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in this world and the elements
Mm.
that they're facing. It is a cruel world, and that's all they really have to defend themselves is like their hope and their hunger and their survival and seeking justice for their loved ones. I mean, that's why it's so interesting to watch Jackson, this town, this little bubble burst, right?
Oh my god. Do you
Yeah,
ever?
I mean, I would love to segue into that just for a bit because
Boy, but yeah. Okay, well, I have final thoughts on
okay,
Joel's death, but
go
actually, I
ahead.
kind of want to save it for the end of the episode because I think
Okay.
it'd be a nice little send off and a tribute to our beloved Joel.
Hey, cheers to The Last of Us.
To The Last of Us. Ding.
Ding. Okay.
All right. Shall we
Woo!
dive back in?
We should dive back in. So, I've been really wanting to get to the scene where Jackson is under threat. The infected come Jackson, Wyoming for the scene, for this show. I feel so much of it is like we're in the game when we're in that town.
Oh, yeah.
It's remarkably well done. I can't imagine. I can only imagine how long it took to set that up and everything that was at stake for it, to feel like the way it did in the game.
Yeah.
Um, I was really I was horrified though to see it come under threat. So with that, when this guy comes running and is like, "Tommy!" Like, okay, I knew something horrific was gonna happen, but I did not imagine basically like a Game of Thrones scene where there's just like infected about to destroy the town. I really wanna talk about the bloater and get your thoughts on the bloater.
We'll get to that. Yeah. No, as that scene started unfolding, I was like, "Oh, okay, big horde running at Jackson. Okay, what? Oh, now they're getting ready for battle. Is that?" And then as that scene was going, I just felt like I was opening the coolest Christmas present I'd ever gotten. I mean, I just could not
Yes.
believe that this enormous, amazing, awesome battle scene that had absolutely nothing to do with the game was just dropped into the middle of the episode. Like it was, you know,
I mean, it wasn't even dropped. The intentionality of it being built up was just so there for me. Like I knew it was coming and I was so stressed about it. There's all these, we have these beloved characters fighting the elements. We feel Joel's death is about to come, as at least for those of us that know and the timeline of the game. And now there's these scenes of infected not only running after Dina, Joel, and Abby, but now the entire town is about to be destroyed. And I gotta say, my maybe new favorite love story is Maria and Tommy.
there's so much understanding in between them that's
Maria's
unspoken.
boss.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously she's the boss. Yeah. No, for sure. And cuz he's at the end of the day, he's a little cowboy just like Joel, and she's the one who's kind of the brains. And then yeah, you got to and that's another thing that was so cool about that whole sequence as a character thing is that it really let Tommy and Maria take center stage, which
Mhm.
they don't get to do very often in the game if at all,
No.
especially not Maria. And you got to see them operating as the leaders of Jackson, and you got to see
Mhm.
how they cooperate and communicate, and you got to see both of them being heroes, and all of the in the quick looks and the quick kiss and the way that their love and concern for each other is expressed, but then they both are setting it aside so they could do what needs to be done. I mean, it was all just such great character stuff for them, which is cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's cool because it's something that you don't get in the game that would have been nice.
Absolutely, there are moments that are in the show that I'm like, that's what's so great about the show. We're expanding on these characters and their development and their arcs in a way that you don't get to in the game. And I think Tommy is so important and Maria is so important to Tommy and vice versa. And that's why it's going to make the loss of Joel so much harder for the community because as we discussed in the last episode, I feel like Joel is more like of this he's an outstanding member of society. He's like building homes for refugees coming into the community and it's just like he's an uncle now to Tommy's kid and there's just so much more going on with this family. Oh,
And
I love
he's
Maria
yeah,
and Tommy.
me too. Yeah. Um maybe some of that was going on with Joel in the game too, but we don't know because in the game ultimately you don't really get a sense of Jackson as a place in a community. Like you walk through it and you get little glimpses, but the game is probably rightly so focused on the character stories that it can't have the kind of scope of a TV show where you can have a bunch of different point of view characters.
Yeah.
So yeah, being able to not just during the attack, but before in the last episode and stuff, seeing how they have kind of like a council that was listening to Ellie's story, and just the way that we've been able to get a greater sense of Jackson as a community and what everybody's position in it is.
Okay. The scene happens. The infected come to the town. The children and women go to the basement. Fighters up on the top. I'm just like, how, like, ugh. I okay, so I'm watching with my partner. Like, he doesn't, like, he couldn't take a breath, man. Like, when the barrels were rolled down and they're shooting them, I'm like, why aren't they like lighting them up like faster? I don't understand. Um, I don't know. The bloater, though. I want to talk about the bloater.
Yeah, we're
How do
talking
you
about the
feel about
bloater. I did think that sequence was great,
it?
like it was it
No,
was a terrifying thing to be
100%.
in a dead end and have this thing coming at you. And then also that moment of like boy, if that bloater had died like 30 seconds later, I would have been screwed. I mean, anyone who's played that game and fought bloaters has had that experience where you're like, "Oh, thank God it died right then because I was done," you know?
Yeah.
Um,
No, I exactly. I felt that for sure. Um, I think just watching it with Amaro, he was like, "Oh man, that thing just fell down and died." I was like, "Yeah, but just in time."
just in
Um,
time.
that's the unpredictability of the show is that I almost feel like with the Game of Thrones, you don't know who could go, who's expendable at this
Mhm.
point, or who's dispensable at this point. And I really thought there was a moment where we were gonna lose Tommy.
I did too. Well, yeah, because I was like, "Oh,
Like,
maybe the thing is, like, Tommy dies and, like, Joel somehow survives or something. Maybe Tommy's gonna die here and Joel's not or something," you know?
yeah,
So
there was a
s
moment where my mind
yeah.
was going there.
Totally, me too. I felt really bad for him, like, I was really empathizing with him, because that's another cool thing about this episode, like, what it did for Tommy and Maria to a lesser
Mhm.
degree, but it really focused on Tommy, is that, like, it really made you love him as a hero, you know? Like, through that whole sequence, like, Tommy was, like, the hero of Jackson, you know?
Yeah,
I
no,
mean, there was that
absolutely.
moment, I didn't notice this till the second time I saw it, where he, like, he realizes that they're gonna breach, so the first thing he does is he runs down to the street level, gets a flamethrower pack, and then he's
Yeah.
standing there with the flamethrower guys, and then when the infected break in, a couple of the other guys take off, and Tommy stands
They
there
take off?
yeah, yeah,
Oh
like,
my
because he's
god.
with a line of guys, and, like, 2 of them run away, and he kinda looks, and then he's like, "Oh, well," and he stays there almost by himself. I think there's, like, one other guy, and I'm like, "Dude, Tommy is so cool. Tommy is such a
To
hero."
Tommy is so cool. That's why I think you and I speculate a season 3 of the game where, like, Tommy is one of the main protagonists that we
Yeah.
follow. Like, I don't know, but Tommy's pretty he's messed up
Yeah, I
by
mean,
the end.
I guess there's rumors going around that there might be a Tommy focused DLC for Last of Us Part 2. So far they don't
Mm,
seem that credible. It seems like kind of a pipe dream type thing, but it's fun to think about.
it is fun. There's so many fun things to think about in this
Yeah.
franchise. That's why it's doing so well.
Yeah, I guess so. Can I say something
Yeah.
else about this battle scene?
Yes, please.
I just really appreciated the intelligence of the plan, and watching the people of
Mhm.
Jackson. It makes sense. It's like, oh yeah, okay, so you hold them off on the ramparts for as long as you can, but that whole thing of having all the non-combatants sheltering in basements and everybody else on the roof, I'm like, oh yeah, that's really smart,
It was
because
really
you know,
smart.
and you see
Yeah.
it play out, like, yeah, that's how you can defend the entire town and take out the massive horde of infected. And so it was cool that it wasn't just mindless action. You were watching like plans and failures and counter plans, and cool.
And this community, as we know, in the game, in the show, they have been preparing and calculated and strategic about protecting this community. So it makes sense that they were prepared with what they had.
Yeah.
Really well done. I just have to ask you, and I have to
Mhm.
ask the audience, did the dogs save Jackson?
I mean, clearly. Yeah. But it did make me wonder. I was like, why didn't they let the dogs out much earlier? I guess because Maria had to run there. It seemed like a weird, like a weird thing in their plan. They're like, we'll keep the dogs locked in the cages, and then we'll have somebody will have to run down from the ramparts and across the town. But yeah, the dogs saved Jackson, and that was sick.
The dogs did save Jackson because it was at that point at which when they ran out, killed them so violently, and it even gave Tommy this boost of confidence. There was a scene where he like raised up his gun, he pointed it out. Like the moment the dogs ran past him, ripping the cordyceps zombies apart, Tommy is like, "All right, I can do this," and he just starts shooting them. And I'm like, the dogs just saved Jackson? Like,
Yeah.
like what?
It
Like,
was so great.
it
And
was
I'm just watching it
incredible.
like, is this I'm watching these dogs, like, leap around and take down infected in this massive wide shot. I'm like, is this episode ever gonna stop giving me presents? Like,
I
it's just
mean,
one juicy, delicious cheeseburger after another, you know? I mean,
yeah, and we're very much dog people.
oh, we
So,
sure are, yeah.
like that was certainly a lovely gift on so
I
many levels.
another thing that kept running through my head as I was watching that sequence, as I was like I was like, "I want to play this," you know? I want that as a playable sequence in a Last of Us game where you start on the ramparts, and you're throwing barrels and shooting zombies and whatever, and then, yeah, it ends with, like, flamethrowers and bloaters and running around the streets, like, the shots where Tommy's, like, running through the, horde of infected, like, shooting different ones, trying to get to Maria and stuff. I was like, "This would be the coolest Last of Us level ever."
Yep, totally.
Can I ask you a question? I mean, I
Yes.
I think I'd already know the answer, and I certainly know how I feel about this, but I think it's
Okay.
worth at least mentioning. Like, did the Gonzo action sequence steal focus from Joel's death?
Ooh, that's a great question.
I honestly don't know because
Mm,
I'm too spoiled on it. I've seen I know everything that's gonna happen. I was just so happy to get some crazy new shit. For me, it enhanced it. I wonder how people who didn't know it was gonna happen would. I feel like it would be great for them too, because it would be this huge red herring. Like you think the real threat is
mhm.
there, but then it's like, no, it was Joel. Anyway, what are your thoughts?
That's a great question. I think it's tough as a gamer, of this series to process that fully and give the most honest answer right now. I think in so many ways, it, it just my heart was palpitating through the whole episode. That did it. I don't know. I feel as though, and in some ways, it enhanced the despair that we're going to feel. Like the town has been through so much. This community is going through so much, and now they're about to lose somebody that they all cared about so very much,
Yeah,
that was contributing. So in so many ways it made me feel like it was a lot more devastating. Because in the game you're playing these characters. There's a different feeling as you're going through the motions. For a show, I think it worked. I don't think
yeah,
it like took away from that despair or that moment or that loss.
yeah, yeah.
I
I feel
mean,
the
yeah.
same way.
And a lot of that has to do with Bella Ramsey's performance too. I
So
think
good,
they
so
did,
good.
such a remarkable job that it broke my heart. See, like I said, like, I can't I'm gonna cry.
It's hard to watch.
It was so hard to watch.
I know. I know.
Um, that's what and in some ways it makes me sad that that scene made me believe them as like that father-daughter duo again. It was their goodbye that almost brought them back together.
Mhm. Yeah. You know something. As I'm thinking about all of this, well, now maybe is a good time for me to say what I was going to say earlier about my final send off to Joel uh, in the show, Pedro Pascal's Joel. Uh, I think that the one thing that I was thinking about in the show that did not come across as much in the game is that we've talked before on the podcast about how the show has gone to such lengths to show Joel's flaws,
Mhm,
and Pedro Pascal has worn those on his sleeve in his performance too, and he's played Joel as like a softer, sort of more broken character than the action hero version that we saw in the game.
mhm,
And up until now, I've had misgivings about that reinterpretation, but watching this episode, it made me realize like Joel in this episode leading up to his death has become a hero. In the first
mhm,
episode, he was an
mhm,
opportunistic smuggler who was just trying to survive, and then he forged this relationship, etc. But now we see him as a paragon of the community. He's contributing. He's deeply invested in the lives of young people, not just Ellie. He has this relationship with Dina, and he's going out of his way to help Abby. And you get more of a sense, he calls her kid, that he now,
mhm.
has
Yeah.
become this sort. And then the thing that the attack on Jackson adds to his character arc is that he has that pull the whole time. From the moment he sees the city burning, all he wants to do is get back to Jackson. And even when
Yeah.
he's facing his death, he's just concerned with getting back to the community that he wants to protect. He's still looking out the window and thinking about it. And also with Abby having her monologue about what he did, we get a chance to see that Joel understands it. He agrees with her. even though he
Mhm.
doesn't want to die, he understands that he did a very wrong thing. And so ultimately, like, he
Yeah.
has actually grown into a real hero in the show by the end. And it does not because he's able to go around and shoot infected and fireflies and save Ellie, but because he's a man who's learned how to show up for other people, and he's rediscovered his humanity. Which is tragic that he dies at that point, but it's also kind of beautiful that, like, the show was able to complete that arc so fully for him.
Yeah, that was a beautiful summary of the conclusion of his life. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Wow, Paul. Um, yeah, a send off to Joel. Cheers.
Yeah, I'm gonna miss. I didn't like the Pedro Pascal Joel as much as the game Joel in the first season, but boy, I'm gonna miss him. I think I'm
Yeah.
just as sad, but in a totally different way to watch him go in this episode.
And at the same time, interested to see how Ellie is gonna seek her, version of justice
Oh
for his death.
It's gonna be so intense, and
Um,
and I'm interested to
mhm.
see what flashbacks we get. I mean, dude, those are gonna destroy. Like, if they do the whole birthday thing, like, I mean, I'm just gonna be a puddle. It's it's gonna be so emotional.
like I find it so fascinating that there are so many podcasts, shows, merchandise, what have you, surrounding this story, The Last of Us. And I wanted to sit back and sort of dissect, like, why is that? Like, what is it that makes this show so accessible to so many different types of people? And I think it just is such an honest, it can be such an honest way of viewing like grief and love and like what you would do for somebody that you love that makes it so relatable. That I find it so fascinating. I'm absolutely thrilled that this game was turned into a show. Never in a million years did I imagine, what, 10 plus years ago when we were like just hanging out, like editing our films, that you would say like, here's the remote, play this game, and I would just absolutely fall in love with gaming, let alone The Last of Us. And it be a TV show that we're talking about over a decade later. Uh, I'm so excited that I'm on this journey with you because for so many reasons, at so many different points of my life, this show, this game, this story has found a way to kind of like keep me going, to keep the heartache. Um, alive in a way where I could cope with it or understand it. Um, so yeah, I'm just so thrilled to be here talking about it as always.
Me too, as always. And also, I'm so relieved that I'm loving this season, because this
Me
whole
too.
process was going to be a little more difficult if I was had all the misgivings and, like, criticisms.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that I just love it.
Yeah,
It's such a
same,
relief.
same. But no, that song Through the Valley, when it Ashley Johnson's voice is just so beautiful. It was probably one of the more beautiful songs and moments that I've heard in a TV show. Um, Wonderful way to end it, as like Jesse and Dina and Ellie are carrying Joel's body through the valley back to Jackson. I was
Hmm.
like, man,
Yeah,
yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
they're really
yes.
firing on all
Oh.
cylinders, man. I mean, it's hitting hard. They're doing it right this season. Oh, that reminds me. So after watching this episode and seeing the barrels and the rooftop snipers and the flamethrower guys and the dogs, I'm suggesting an alternate name for this episode, which is Jackson Was Ready.
Brilliant.
It turns out they were actually
I
ready.
think that's great.
Yeah.
Jackson was ready. um, Brilliant, Paul. All right, everybody. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the show as much as we did, and we will see you next time on The Fungus.
Among Us, a Last of Us podcast.
Have a good day, night, wherever you are. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening.